is Mike Johnson, Union Gospel Mission on line 2. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Dave. It's good to be with you, and I hope I can be helpful here.
I hope you can too. You're a gun guy.
And the reason that you and Robert get into this, merry-go-round is because we're talking about this as a gun law instead of addressing the challenges and problems there are in getting someone detained on a mental health detainer. So I was out on outreach van last week, and we stopped with a guy who was psychotic. And we knew we couldn't get him detained. He didn't meet the standards of being an imminent threat of harm to himself or others. And very literally within 10 hours, he OD'd and is brain dead and was taken off life support yesterday and is dead. And so, but we knew, like, the standards of what it takes, the way the system is set up to determine if someone is a threat of harm to themselves or others is based on urgency and time frame. Are they going to do something hurtful to themselves or somebody else now, like right now? And so that's been the problem with the whole gun stuff. But the mental health system is largely run by and operated by folks that have a very high sensitivity to sort of infringing on someone's constitutional rights in locking them up. They're not nearly as sensitized to the constitutional rights of taking their gun away. So the idea of the red flag law is, well, I can't really lock you up because the standards aren't that way, but I can at least take your guns away. And that way, if you won't be as hurtful to somebody else. My view is, if somebody is so much of a threat to themselves or others that we have to take their guns away, then they should be in a mental health detainer. And so we need to revisit this issue of time frame and imminence, and we need to maybe create a third standard, which is called need for treatment. Arizona has a need for treatment standard in their Involuntary Treatment Act. Washington probably should consider that too. But if we're going to, and we need to have people remember that removing someone's constitutional rights is removing someone's constitutional rights. And you can't say, well, you're sick enough for us to take that right away, but that's not a right I really care about all that much. So the folks that told us we couldn't go to church during coronavirus are largely people who don't go to church.
So the idea being that if you are bad enough, health-wise, mental health-wise, or a risk enough for us to violate a constitutional right, because of the significance of what a constitutional right is, that would indicate you better be considered bad enough to be in a treatment facility? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that what that means is that we need to be a lot more prepared to put someone in a treatment facility.
Right.
We leave people to die all the time because we're so concerned about infringing on their constitutional rights of movement that we don't want to lock them up. And the pendulum is out of balance. It really is.
Well, you're making my point, Mike, because what I was trying to get through to Robert is that all the standard arguments can't be in play. We do have to change something, and I am promoting, like you're suggesting, that if we're going to have to infringe, if we want to save lives and we want to save people from themselves, we're going to have to be willing to encroach in somebody's freedom of movement sooner or more often or with different criteria than we've done to this point. Fair enough?
Right. And when you do that, you're going to remove somebody's guns because you've determined they're a threat of harm to themselves or others, right? And so if you fix the detention problem, then what you end up doing with guns is natural and appropriate and internally coherent. But if you try to take this at a gun level, then it's incoherent. You're saying someone's so dangerous they can't have their guns, but they're not so dangerous I should lock them up.
Yeah.
Are we going to take all their knives?
Yeah, that's backwards, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
So this is the way to solve this is to fix the mental health system. We fix the mental health system. We not only deal with guns, we also help homelessness as well, and a whole bunch of other issues. This is where the breakdown is. It's not with the gun laws. It's with the mental health system.
But see, that's complicated, complex. It's the mind. We don't necessarily understand it. It's a lot easier to think we just grab somebody's gun and we're done, right? So you're really talking about a higher level, a more sophisticated, necessary approach to dealing with mental health stuff.
Well, but my bet is that what we just laid out is completely understandable to all of your listeners. It's just taking the time to treat them like adults instead of treat them all like children and say, "Oh, well, you're too scary. We need to take your guns away." If you're that scary, then you need treatment.
Right. Well, but again, you say that you saw a person kill himself from an overdose just recently because he wasn't determined at the scene by somebody to not be a big enough threat. Did you guys think that he was?
Well, as we drove away, and I was out there with two elected officials, who it was an amazing experience. And we drove away, and the conversation was about the weaknesses in our capacity to get someone a mental health detention. Because as we drove away, we all said that guy needs a mental health detention. He is a danger to himself, and we know that we can't get him because we know what the standards are. We know if we had a mental health professional here, it wouldn't meet those standards. And the next morning he was dead.
See, that's my point. That's where the complexion comes from. The sophistication comes from is in setting up the system that everybody can play by. I get the simpleness and the directness of what you're talking about, but now it's who gets to make the judgment. What's the DMS-5 or what? How are we determining? What constitutes the mental problem that you all felt that you saw, but yet the system wouldn't acknowledge. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I agree. But when you remove guns from the conversation entirely and you just talk about danger and our willingness to address that people can be dangerous and need treatment without the situation of imminence, right? It doesn't have to be that it's going to happen in the next 10 minutes.
Right.
Once we understand that, then we're not talking about the guns anymore, and we're not in this sort of potential problem of, merely wanting a gun is potentially, evidence of a mental health disorder, because we're not focused on the gun anymore.
We're
totally
get
focused
that.
on other behaviors that create an awareness of danger.
Right, and then guns just become part of the package
Exactly.
as we're dealing with the other things. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on.